the very first episode of Hacktics and Telemetry, a Rapid7 produced podcast. We are your co-hosts. My name is Douglas McKee. Also can find me as FullMetalPackets. And I'm joined by CryptoCat or Jonah. Jonah, you ready to get started with this?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
We are producing this podcast to kind of provide a one-stop shop for all things cybersecurity and security research. Joined my team not that long ago, and we sat down and we're like, what can we do, or do we think that we have something interesting to provide the community? And we see all kinds of different content out there, but we really wanted a place where you could hear from Rapid7 Labs what we feel is important that's happening from a security research perspective, what we think you should do about it, and also bring in industry experts. So that's why we've put together this podcast. So we're going to break this down into 3 separate components every episode. We're going to start with the situation room. What are we going to do in the situation room, Jonah?
We're going to go over the latest security-related news and any cool research, exploits, things like that.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of do this in real time, right? Like we're not scripting this. We're going to search the internet while we're looking for things and see what is out there that we think that maybe you haven't heard about, that you should hear about, and sometimes go into a deeper dive and talk about some of these issues. And then we're going to go and move over to what we're calling the war room. This is going to be our guest segment for every episode, and we're going to try to bring in industry experts and a wide variety of industry experts, right, Jonah? Like, what are some of the type of people that we're going to bring in?
Oh, for sure, researchers, hackers, bug bounty hunters, and also more high-level people, CISOs, anybody with a good security background.
Yeah, we're not going to like play to one particular area, right? We want to bring everybody in to make sure that we're providing a diverse perspective on some of these issues that we're seeing. And that reminds me, if you ever want to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to reach out to Jonah and myself. We'd love to get different type of people on here. Anything cybersecurity related, we're interested in. You just reach out and let us know, and we'll see what we can do to fit that in our schedule. But one of the things that I say all the time, especially when I'm either teaching for SANS or when I'm interviewing with media, is that the big thing that separates the good guys from the bad guys in cybersecurity is what we do, the final action we do with that knowledge. This think red, act blue mentality that I like to talk about. And so we're going to actually end this every episode in a similar fashion, where the last segment is going to be called the Mitigation Minute. So Jonah and I are both hackers at heart, so we've kind of nerded out for an episode over all the cool new things that security researchers are doing and all the different attacks that are going out there, and talking to guests about the same thing. But we're going to end kind of firmly concreted in, okay, what does this mean for you as either a blue teamer or an organization or an executive? And what are some of the tools to help you do that and make sure that you have the knowledge, actionable advice to move forward to help protect your industry? So I don't want to spend too much time on this, Jonah. We've got a lot to cover today. You ready to jump in and get started?
Yeah. No time like the present.
All right, let's do it. All right, so for our first segment, we're going to call this the situation room. And Jonah and I, what are we going to do here? We are going to break down current events and research that we've seen out there since the last podcast, being that this is the first one, just ones that we've seen recently, what we find interesting, what we think would be important for maybe things you didn't catch, during the last couple weeks that we think is important for you to know about. A little bit researcher centric first. We'll take some deep dives into some things and just talk about how things are unfolding. So, Jonah, what did you see? What's first on your mind this week?
I've got a couple of cool articles. I think there's a general theme of like AI is involved in some way in all of them. Let me share my screen and I'll show you the first one.
We seem to not get sick of AI in 2026. Like it's just
it's the new thing.
Man. It's like AI. In fact,
for sure.
To that point, I think we're going to have, I know we are going to have an AI expert on our podcast here coming up. So it's great that we're talking about this as we move forward.
Definitely. So this first one is a report. This is actually analysis. So this was a bug that was found by Rezo, Rhinorator, Lupin, and the authors of this article of this new site, starstrike.ai, which is BuzzFactor and Monkey. So like 5 of the best bug hunters out there. If you see these 5 names on a article, you want to read it.
Absolutely. You can only miss this one.
Yeah. And this is also a series as well. So I saw part two of this came out. Maybe we'll talk about that briefly at the end of this one. But
I just read
this was
part two
found,
yesterday. It's pretty crazy too. We should
yeah,
mention it.
yeah, for sure. So this was found at the Google's Bug Swat live hacking event. It also got awarded the most creative finding, and their team won overall. So like even more reason to have a look at this. And what was the vulnerability about? Well, it was focusing on Gemini, and specifically that Gemini was now like available as a mobile app, and that it was quite different to what you could access in the browser.
And
And the
what I was looking at when I was looking at this, I was kind of reading a little bit about how Google is trying to integrate Gemini into like every aspect of Android. And I think that's part of what's interesting here is the more that we integrate these AI apps, there's new attack surfaces that open up. Is that what you're seeing here too?
Definitely, yeah. I think they're aiming or perhaps aiming to replace like Google Assistant. So I think they're going more like fully integrated with the mobile app than they are with like the browser, from what I can gather
So,
anyway.
so like it's gonna be kind of scary. I know like I'm not an Android user personally. I'm an iPhone user, but I know a lot of Android users, and they love like my some of my family's one of them, and they love saying like "Okay Google." So what's scary to me is all of a sudden we're gonna be able to say "Okay Google," and that's gonna be directly into the Gemini app, right? Is that kind of what I understand?
I guess so, yeah. To be fair, I've never said "Okay Google" to my phone. I'd rather it not be listening to me. I'm sure it is at all times, but I'd rather it not.
You
Um,
at least feel like you're more protected because you think it's not.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just assume it is anyway, but yeah, so in this vulnerability anyway, so it's data exfiltration as you can see from the title here, and they needed two components to make this successful. One is delivery, so how are they going to inject a prompt into Gemini on the mobile app? And the next would be exfiltration. There's no use injecting a prompt if you can't actually get anything useful out of the phone, if you can't get any data out of there. So
Definitely. I
the
mean, I would argue that point a little bit. If you can inject into a prompt and not get data out, you could probably still do something malicious, but you're not gonna be able to steal anything, right? Like that's the difference between.
true.
I mean, like I don't know, if you could open a port, for example, through a prompt injection, like that could be useful.
True, very, very true. Yeah, yeah, okay. So the data exfiltration will escalate the impacts quite a bit, let's say. I think
Absolutely.
for this example, they're saying like, well, if you want to grab like 2FA codes and actually get access to people's accounts, you're going to want to get that out of there. If they have any sensitive data on phone and you want to retrieve it, I mean, how are you going to get it out? And the first part they look at then is the delivery. And basically for this they found so that they need to deliver the prompt injection to Gemini first of all, and they found a gadget. Rhino Rater found a gadget in the APK which an intent which could populate the contents of an input field. So it allows them to populate the chat prompt of Gemini, but there was some restrictions around this that they needed to create a clickjacking type app. So they actually created just a very simple app. It was a captcha app, so you have to press 5 times in order to solve the captcha. And the first three are going to
What
trigger that attempt.
wasn't I reading this that they strategically put the button for doing a CAPTCHA over where the send button is or something like that? Is
Exactly. Yep. So they you have to tap it 5 times. The first three are going to populate the chart, and then the next one or two, it says it can happen on the fourth or the fifth, and that's basically going to be the send button. So you're just
oh,
tapping, tap, 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 and then the fifth tap should hit send on. So that's the one part that you can't like just automatically
I
do
think
with
that brings
this.
up
You
an
need
interesting discussion though, right? Like because we're talking about security research, and I want to take nothing away from this. This is like stupid awesome stuff. Like it gets me excited from the hacker in me gets excited. But I'm curious, Jonah, what's your perspective? Do you think that that is realistic enough that users will go through? Like if I was to try to do this in the wild, like if I sent, maybe not sent to you because you're a sophisticated security researcher, but like if I was to send this to my grandma, do you think she taps 5 times? Like, do you think that's
uh,
realistic?
not for this, but I mean they do say that this is like a very I can't remember what they said there, a very unconvincing capture. So the thing is, this is during a bug bounty event, so
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
there's not really any benefit. There's no added benefit really of being super creative with the app. You know, it'll look good, but it's not actually going to earn them more money as long as the potential is there. Like somebody could, I mean, maybe this could just be like the new Flappy Bird app, and you just like tap in on the bird, but
There you
actually
go.
everybody's getting prompts injected, and
All
You can
right,
just
someone's going to
exfiltrate
steal
it.
that from this podcast, and they're going to make that, that's
Um,
the new threat actor right there. Everybody, watch out
yeah.
for the Flappy Birds app. You heard it here
Uh,
first.
but we'll also see that they later were able to get around this part. I mean, this is the part that makes it more difficult to like get the whole attack chain through. But um, there were some changes for the next bug hunting event, which made that a little bit easier. So at this point, anyway, they're able to inject the prompt. The thing is, how are they going to get the data back? And what they talk about here is that the app, as we were saying, the app's quite different to the browser in that they want to try and make it as little friction as possible, and so the tool should be able to call different tools in sequence. So they've already called this intent right to populate the chat. They've got the user to hit send. Now they want to be able to say read a text message. Maybe the text message has the 2FA code in it. And they don't want to then have to worry about how do we get this back. They want the tools just to chain all the calls together and get back that 2FA code or whatever kind of interesting data that there is. And they found then that there's an SMS tool call. So like one thing would be, okay, we get the 2FA code. Can we just make the app send a text message to the attacker that contains that 2FA code? But the problem with that is that it does require some interaction from the user. So it's basically going to ask them for confirmation. Do you wish for the Gemini to send this text message for you?
Yeah,
And that's
just some context for our audience, depending on like who's listening, what your experience is. Like when we talk about exploits and we talk about bug bounties, like the least human interaction you can have, the better, because it's going to be a higher reward bug bounty. And when you're talking about threat actors, they don't want to have to involve the human at all. So like as a researcher, when I see this, I'm like, can I find something that's better, right? Or can I find a different path that doesn't require that? I just figure out provide that context, because that's exactly what they do here. They find another path, right? And I love the other path that they find.
yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing is it's going to allow them to get more victims, right? Because more people are just gonna not realize it's happening, but also it stays undetected longer. Because if you
Yeah,
have like an app where it's popping up saying, "Oh, do you want to send this text message?" Very quickly, people are going to start digging into that, and then before you know it, there's going to be news articles and things like that, which just will affect the whole. Will make the attacks far less reliable. So how did they get around this anyway? They didn't want to use the SMS because that was going to ruin the it's going to make it far less believable, have people doing extra clicks that they don't want to do. So they found that there wasn't any prompt required for making a phone call. So you can have it send this prompt, grab some data from a text message, and then make a phone call without any interaction from the
that's
user, without them
crazy
being
to me.
alerted
So
in any
like a
way.
text message requires interaction, but a phone call doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird,
It's
right? And I mean,
it's almost like we've forgotten what the whole purpose of a quote unquote phone is. It's like that's
yeah,
not what we use them for anymore. Nobody cares about phone calls, but they care about text
for
messages.
sure.
It's just ridiculous.
And I mean, they said here like that's not too much impact there. You could leak the victim's phone number to the attacker. That's about it. I mean, I kind of think as well there probably could be more impact if you can make phone calls on behalf of the victim. You know, I could probably think of other. Can they like make phone calls to like a bank from that number? Do you know what I mean? From to that user's bank? I don't know. I feel like there's probably some other avenues to explore there, but they didn't need to because they were able to find more impact from the DTMF, so the dual tone multi-frequency, which
Back to the '70s, man.
anybody who's been on hold of the call center will know. You press these buttons to go to different areas, and this is basically the mapping of what you press on the phone and then what tone comes through on the other side. So they can essentially make a phone call to the attacker and they'll have these DTMF tones at the end of that number, and then whenever the call's received, it'll just stop playing. And obviously, if you receive that call as an attacker, it's not going to make much sense either. So you're going to need to build like a system to automatically extract and build this back into data, so you can just have a nice, quick, efficient,
Yeah,
grab the
we
2FA code
can vibe
and move
code
on.
anything today. That's easy.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, that was the flow of the attack. In the proposed scenario, the victim would have a POC app, which, as we say, is taken away from the realism a little bit, and the prompt would send to be no further interaction, and then the attacker will get that encoded data in the phone call. Now, they mention here that several months after, Google released shareable gems, and that completely removed the need for the malicious app, which was
That's
the
smart
real thing
too.
that was kind of limiting it. Yeah. And they said they'll talk about this. This was part of the Mexico hack. Let me see if I go back here. Can we
Yeah,
just
they
have a
have the
quick
second
look at
one was
that?
just released. Yep.
Yeah, so this one is classifier-based data exfiltration via volume settings. And the idea is basically the same, but they're able to, so they're using these shareable gems, and the thinking here was it will actually, they can change the volume, they can change some other things, volume, media volume, call volume, ring volume, alarm volume, notification volume.
Do we know what these shareable gems are? Like,
I haven't really
I
looked
haven't looked
into
into them.
them. Let me see here.
So,
So,
according to Google, shareable gems allow users to create, share, and collaborate on custom AI experts via links, similar to sharing Google Docs.
okay. So they still need somebody to open the gem, right, or install the gem, I guess.
Yeah, they have to. That's what I'm taking away from this too. You can share gems with specific people, your organization, or via private public links to enhance productivity. So that's what they added into Gemini, right?
Yep. And yeah, so upon interacting with the gem, a tool of our choice will be executed. So it's going to be the same thing. Say they wanted to get the 2FA codes then, rather than having that go back in the tone frequency through a phone call, they can adjust some of the volume settings, these various volume settings, and then there's nothing stopping them from reading that back, right? I think they're just
Yep.
taking that straight from.
I think they're taking that from the different output, right? Like with the changes in the levels of the volume. They just read
Yeah,
what the volume level is, and then they're translating that, I think.
the only thing was that they were kind of limited on that. They can't just set the percentage here, so they can't just do like 1%, 2%.
Hmm.
It goes up in steps depending on the type of volume that's there. So that's why they built this like classifier, hierarchical classification, and that allowed them to do around 100,000 combinations. So I was thinking another way, because they were saying this would like increase the amount of data they could get back. I kind of thought maybe they could just also like, because it's the same for like ASCII and stuff like that, you know, to get like the full range of characters. Maybe they could also just encode it in bits and then reconstruct that. Maybe I'm missing something on that, but so this is part two. I don't know, did they mention a
I don't
third
think it's
part?
going to be a part
No.
three, if
I'm
that's
sure
okay.
they'll have something
Oh, they're
coming
going to
through.
definitely continue to do this research. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's amazing research. I think it's cutting edge, and it shows, kind of where we're going when it comes to. Also, I think it highlights like I keep saying this. I've said this a lot now about how like older techniques still keep resurfacing. I think they make the joke in the. By the way, this is not my area of expertise, but I think they make the joke in the fashion industry that like fashion loops back around every X number of years. Like I think you see people wearing like bell bottoms now, and that was like from the 70s. I
Oh,
feel like
retro's always cool, right? And then
yeah,
retro
yeah.
just
Like
constantly
I
changes.
feel
What's
like we're
retro?
seeing some of that in technology though too, right? Like
Yeah.
we're seeing older techniques because we're trying to protect against all this new hip technology, and it's leaving gaps in where older stuff still works in the
Yep.
or backwards compatibility is doing the same thing. Microsoft is super known for that and leaving components in that have older capabilities. But I think so for SANS, I teach a module on bypassing 2FA, and so now we've got one more technique we can highlight in potential ways to bypass 2FA, which I think is fantastic because
Yeah.
people often think that's the silver bullet, and hey, there's ways to get around that too. Like it's not perfect. That's a cool article. What else did you find this week? Anything?
Well, yeah, speaking of retro vulnerabilities that don't go out of date, another one we have is a command injection. So
Did
let
I
me
did I
also.
I did not know you were going to do. By the way, people are going to think that's staged. I did not. That was not an intentional segue. I just
No,
love that. That's
let
fantastic.
me share this one. Okay. So yeah, this is a cool one. This is from Hacktron AI,
Oh
and
yes, beyond
this
trust,
is
right?
yeah, beyond trust vulnerability, and there's a couple of interesting parts to this. So I mean, first of all, if you don't know about Hacktron AI, it's like kind of an assistant that you can use for vulnerability research and code reviews and things like that. So it's not fully autonomous. Like you can have it run tools and things like that, but you're generally working with it. You're giving prompts, it's coming back with information, and then you're kind of like directing it where you want to go. So I think you can't just like run it and just like get 0 days fallout. You kind of still need to know what you're doing in order to guide it in the right direction. But they have a really good team of people, and I've seen some crazy research coming out for them. And one of them was the Beyond Trust. And this is an interesting one because there had already been some vulnerabilities previously, actually in a very similar part of the Beyond Trust software, which had been like actively exploited as well. And it was also command injection, but like a slightly different place, slightly different variety of it. But I think the more interesting part of this was, I mean, our researcher Stephen Fewer actually went through and analyzed the patch diff, and then came back to show with a nice analysis, which you can find on our blog, with like all the details about how the vulnerability works and how they patched it.
Yeah, we'll make
And
sure we put the link. We'll make sure we put the link in the show notes.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And he actually asked at the time the question because Hacktron had released this blog, and the day before they released this, or the day before the vulnerability was reported, Watchtower also released a blog where they went through the analysis of the same vulnerability, which was in some Avanti software. Maybe it was the EPMM, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, it was the exact same bug. And Stephen basically asked the question, was like, well, it's kind of an obscure kind of bug, this like bash shell expansion, which like not a lot of people have known about. Even I think in CTF, it's only come up a few times, but
Yeah,
like
it's
some
also
quite old
arguably
CTFs as well.
like, couldn't you argue it's a new bug class in itself, or maybe not class, but bug type, different new bug type?
I think it's definitely something that people weren't looking out for. Like I had a
Yeah,
look to try and find out how many CTFs it had been in previously, and I could find ones from like 5, 10 years ago it's been there for a while, but it's just not something that's really on people's radar. So he basically asked the question, was like, well, this was found in Avanti, and then like the day later, Hacktron found this, and they're like an AI assisted tooling. So did they specifically go and look for this? And whenever he posted about that online, whenever he added it to our blog, Harsh, who was I think the guy who discovered this vulnerability, also from the Hackttron team, he basically responded to the tweet saying, actually, yeah, that's exactly what happened. We read the blog
that's
about Avanti, and we were like, oh, this is probably in some other software. So they just made an agent and went looking for that specific type of bug. And they basically have that with their product as well. With Hacktron, it's like there are different agents, like a browser hacking agent, and then so depending on what type of vulnerabilities you're looking for, you can basically use these different agents.
I mean, that just goes to show like how AI is changing, changing the game for security researchers as well. They were able to turn that bug around pretty quick. And yeah, I looked up. You're right. It was the Avanti bug in EPMM. It's the
Yeah.
2026 1340 and 1281 CVEs. But yeah, so but
Well, while we're still on this as well, because I also want to bring in, I mean, we're talking about Hacktron, which I think is like a really cool project. There's also different styles of the AI automation of finding vulnerabilities. And let me
yeah.
just share my other screen. Um, Also very related to AI. This is another AI tool, an automated
Oh,
tool,
oh, there it
which,
is. There's the big
uh,
buzzword today, OpenClaw.
yeah. So
And stay
this was an
tuned
interesting one.
for the next segment. We're going to be talking quite a bit about OpenClaw. We've got Greg Richardson joining us, who is actually an expert in leveraging or OpenClaw in AI. So if you're interested in that, check out the next segment.
Yeah, everybody's talking about OpenClaw at the moment, and that's basically what these guys were thinking as well. They saw that OpenClaw come out. Everybody was talking about it and saying, "Oh, there's lots of security issues, things like that," and they decided to let their autonomous AI agent go and try to find a 0 day in OpenClaw. So, unlike Hacktron, which is very much, I mean, maybe you can just like leave it on like an auto mode and just leave it for hours or days on end. I don't know how much that's going to cost you, but
Might cost you
the
quite a bit.
yeah, and I think personally it might be better to have like somebody there who knows what they're doing, who's guiding it along. But just to show that that's not necessarily a requirement, they basically just left this. So as you can see, it was able to find one-click account takeover to RCE in approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes. So a victim will visit the attacker-controlled website, and that'll leak the authentication token from the gateway, which is enabled by default. via a WebSocket channel, and then an arbitrary command will run, even if the victim is hosting locally. So this was cool because they basically just show like this was the prompt we gave, and they just left it for an hour and 40 minutes, and then they just come back and it's just been left on its own. It's running tools, it's coming printing out, I found this, I'm going to check this next, and oh, maybe there's directory
And did they,
traversal
I
here.
assume it was validated, that it's a
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So they got, I think at the end, if I'm not mistaken, they just got a POC. I don't know, did they have the POC here, but there's a video for it as well of them demoing. So yeah, implementation details and full exploit code are also available here. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting. You've got two different types of AI systems, and there's also like Expo, which a lot of people might be familiar with, is also like fully automated. They just leave it like 24/7 running against HackerOne programs, and they actually made it to, I don't know, was it number one or number two on the US HackerOne leaderboard. So there's a little bit of controversy there, I think, because it is mainly going after like easily automated vulnerabilities, or vulnerabilities that's easy to automate the finding
Yeah,
from,
that
like
makes sense.
XSS vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
for example. And also, I think like it's costing a lot more to
I
run
was
it
gonna
than
say,
it
are
is to
they able to
find.
make enough money to cover their costs? Because if you're just letting these algorithms just take off, I can get real expensive real quick.
Yeah, despite how much you can make from bug bounty, I think it's not covering the cost of the tokens and then, all of the workers and developers and things they need. I'm guessing that, they're just kind of hedging their bet that tokens are going to get so cheap at one point that they want to be there first. And it's probably similar with Hacktron as well.
Yeah, I also wonder too, as the models progress, right? The older models become less expensive, and so like, at what point does the model that's current becomes older that allows them to do it for cheaper, where it makes sense. But some of these two different techniques remind me of how where fuzzing's gone in the vulnerable discovery industry as well. So when we talk about, I mean, fuzzing's been around for decades, right? It's the way vulnerability researchers find bugs. And we talk about different methodologies in fuzzing. You talk about random fuzzing, you talk about intelligent mutation fuzzing, right? Just two different examples. It seems like letting OpenClaw run loose and find something is kind of a little bit more attuned to like random fuzzing, where you might be successful, but you don't know how long it's going to take, how many resources it's going to take, and like there's certain things that you may or may not achieve in that method. Where the Hacktron approach, where it's a lot more human guided, is kind of like intelligent mutation fuzzing. And the fact that the humans in the loop gives you a higher probability of success, but you're still leveraging the power of the automation or of the tool, right? In this case, so that's the kind of the way I'm looking at it, and I see both methods being useful, right? Like, actually, you just proven that both methods are being useful. I'm personally someone that's always going to do that more human in the loop, intelligent style of bug finding. I think you'll find, like as you just said, you'll find more impactful bugs potentially, at least at the current state of these AI hacking tools. Who knows? Maybe in 10 years, or maybe in 2 months, not 10 years, maybe in 2 months that'll completely change. But well,
I
that's it.
mean, it's clear that both work. I'm generally on the side of like the assisted, as you are as well. That
Yeah.
I think assisted works better. It's going to save tokens. It's going to reduce risk in the sense that, I mean, specifically with bug bounty, I don't know how Expo get around this, but like you don't want your AI to be doing anything that can like damage anything on
Right.
production. Do you know what I mean? You don't want it to like accidentally say I'm going to drop this table when I do find this SQL injection. And whose responsibility is that then? Because if that happened and a bug hunter does that, they're going to be in trouble. But if like Expo are just like, oh well, like it wasn't us, it was the software that did it. There has to be some kind of liability.
Oh, the
But
liability, legal government ramifications of this is endless. Like, that's going to be a really interesting conversation.
I think my main reason for liking the semi-autonomous approach is I also want a job, so I don't want just an autonomous AI that just finds all of the bugs and I'm not needed anymore. So I'll vote semi-autonomous.
I don't think we're really at risk of losing our jobs at this point. I
Not
think
yet, not yet.
I think our jobs are going to evolve, and
Yeah,
those that embrace the AI technology to do the jobs will be a step ahead, right?
yeah,
Because there's no doubt a production increase by leveraging the technologies, and you want to definitely, now one researcher can do maybe what two researchers used to do, and I'm just making this up. Like, I don't know what the actual production increase is, but there's no denying there is an increase. So I think, like, for researchers like you and me and all the rest of the security researchers out there, my thing would be embrace it, learn how to use it, learn how to make it part of your workflows, because clearly it's working, right? And I think that's what saves our
Well,
product. And
there's the other thing there as well, is like, there's the more that there's vibe coding, the more that people are using AI to quickly build all of these different systems, the more bugs there are to be found. And it actually
yeah,
reminds me, I think we talked about this recently. Like I saw a tweet as is it Anthropic came out with like the Claude secure code review tool thing that you can
yeah,
sign up for early
we
access
were
for.
talking about that not that long ago.
Yeah, I saw somebody tweet about that saying like, okay, so now they have a tool which lets you write insecure code,
Yeah,
and now once you've done that, they're gonna sell you this other tool that like finds the vulnerabilities, and then they're gonna sell you another one that fixes the vulnerabilities. It's like they've kind of got an incentive there to like not actually write secure code from the
yeah,
start, because then all their other products
and
aren't
it's going
gonna
to be
be
different
useful.
tiers of payment levels, right? So like the lowest tier code thing is going to intentionally. No, I don't want to make that accusation. It has a
Yeah.
higher probability of writing insecure code, right? And so like it's just going to balloon up. It's an interesting world that we're headed towards in that from that perspective.
Yeah, 100%.
Any other interesting articles to bring up this week?
I mean, I've seen a lot. I don't have enough that I can.
Well, we don't have
If I
time to go through the entire internet. That's the problem.
Yeah, yeah. I see too much, and then like a lot of it, I think just go and read yourself, because in the time that it's going to take me to just like summarize it, I think I'm not going to do a lot of them
No,
any
I think I
justice.
think
But
I think that's good here. We'll keep pulling out articles there or research that we think is important for you to know about. That's cutting edge, and keep presenting it to y'all so you know what's going on. All right, welcome to the next segment of the podcast. We're now into what we call the war room, and this is where we bring industry guests into the podcast, or we bring in researchers from Rapid7, and we deep dive into a specific topic, always trying to get the latest and greatest opinions of what's going on in cybersecurity. So I'm super excited to say that this time we have Greg Richardson joining us. He's definitely an AI expert in the industry. He has a best-selling book on Amazon related to leveraging AI. So, Greg, welcome to the podcast, and why don't you tell our audience just a little bit about yourself?
Honored to be here, Doug. Thank you. A little bit about myself, about 30-ish, maybe 31, 32 years in cybersecurity.
So you're
AK
25, 23?
Yep, exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
cool, cool.
AKA, I was in cybersecurity long before it was a popular thing to do. It was a terrible industry to get into. When I got into it, there was basically no internet. No, there was no internet, full stop. And people were more concerned about their accountant stealing their checkbook and pretending to use their signature to go and steal money. They were not very concerned about people stealing stuff on a network or from a computer. But I stuck with it because I liked it. I kind of always have had this hacker mindset. I like looking at things and figuring out how I could make it do something that it was not designed to do, aka how I could break it. And that has served me very well because that's a useful ontology to have in the cybersecurity space. Um,
I think you're talking to the right group of people
yeah,
as far as hacker
I,
goes.
I I'm certain I am.
Yeah,
From
we
the
definitely have a
name at
hacker
the bottom
community.
of the screen of the person to the left, these are my people. Doug, I know obviously, but anyone that calls himself Crypto Cat, we are sharing the same brain. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started in the industry, stuck with it. The in some interesting stuff happened probably about maybe 15, 20 years ago, somewhere thereabouts. Started working for very, very, very large companies like McAfee, Palo Alto Networks, etc. And there I got exposed to how cybersecurity companies were one of the very, very, very early users of AI. So I got really kind of entrenched in AI and watching
Wait,
how
hold
the
on.
teams were using it. Yeah,
Hold
go
on a
ahead.
second. You mean you're telling me that AI didn't just happen a couple years ago? Oh
No,
my goodness. It's been
I,
around
I I
longer than
love to wow people with that when I'm talking to, the audiences I usually speak to, which are very non-technical people. A mentor of mine said, if you can explain something simply, if you can't explain something simply, then you don't know it as well as you think you do. So I've really made kind of my specialty of explaining stuff in words that anyone, and that doesn't mean dumb people. It just means non-technical people.
that.
So the CEO of Bank of America, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, they're super smart, they're billionaires, they're super wealthy, but they're not tech people. So being able to explain a tech paradigm to them in words that they understand and speak well, I like working in that space.
And that's the premise of your book, right?
It is 100% the premise of my book. How do non-technical people, business people, leaders, how can you leverage AI in a responsible, ethical, and effective way? So I learned a lot of that working for people like a guy that was both of our bosses back in the day, Steve Grobman. He really kind of like kicked me into the deep end of the pool of what AI can do and what its capabilities are. Back then, it was a lot of Jupyter notebooks and Python code and TensorFlow. But now it's significantly more, let's call it, accessible. So what's happened, with the onset of things like transformers and OpenAI, and not just OpenAI, I'm just using them because everyone has heard of ChatGPT and likely OpenAI, even though they're screwing up big time by including ads in their stupid AI right now. But I digress. They democratized the AI industry. So that's where everyone thinks, oh my God, this thing just was invented, 3 years ago. All they did is really democratize it, and kudos to them. They did a phenomenal job. And I think AI is now becoming a paradigm shift in work. So that's a little bit about Greg, how I got started, where my expertise in AI comes from, where my expertise in cybersecurity comes from. I've worked with Doug for many, many years. We've become friends since then, even though we don't work together anymore. So that's kind of my background.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think I want to pull actually on a thread a little bit that you mentioned there, because you talked about being around before the internet was here, right? And in the last segment, we just talked about a new AI related attack with Gemini. I don't know if you've seen the attack that some security researchers were able to do, where they attacked the Android Gemini app. By the way, Greg is, I'm just going to put this out there. Greg is an Android user, so I'll be hacking his phone later today.
Same.
But using the Gemini app, they were able to exfiltrate some data using DTMF. In other words, using the old,
Wow.
send out a call and then
Captain Crunch stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say Captain Crunch, right? Like you and I remember those things. So really, curious, because we were just talking about their research and everything and how awesome it is and some of the technical side of it.
I just want to make one point of clarification. You said, Doug, I'm an Android user, so you will be hacking my phone later. And then CryptoCat said, yes, me too.
Whoa.
You're an Android user, or
Yeah. Don't worry.
Which is it?
Maybe a bit of both. No, I'm an Android user as well. In fact, I've never actually used an Apple product. I've never had an iPhone. I've never had an iPad, iPod, iMac, nothing.
Told you this guy we're in the same head right there. I love it.
Great. I'm outnumbered. Fantastic.
I'm fundamentally, and it's not a security thing, to be very transparent. My issue with the Apple infrastructure ecosystem has always been, I'm fundamentally against an ecosystem that says, you're going to buy the product from me, and then I am going to control where you can get apps from, what you could do with it. No. If I want to break the device by an app I put on it, I bought the device. I'll buy another one. Let me be able to break it. And that's fundamentally why I'm with tools like Androids. So we're the same. I've experimented with some Apple stuff early on, probably the 3GS or something like that, but it's not for me at all. And I can't hold a closed ecosystem nonsense.
What about you, Doug?
I am an iPhone user, so Greg and I are on opposite sides of I was a big Android user back in the day, like when it first came out, and it was the side loading apps and nightly builds for all the different features. And I'm drawing a blank now on the ROM I used to run, but it was a big one, all that fun stuff. But then I found this thing where I needed my phone to do things like make phone calls and the GPS to actually work. And it turns out Apple's better at that than Android was, at least back when I switched probably 15 to 16 years ago at this point.
I'm going to let you slide with that non-factual response, but it's okay.
All right. Well, we could debate that another time, but I am curious to think what you think about the combination of AI being, hacking these Gemini type apps and then combining it with these. I mean, this back in the 70s and 80s, we talk about phone freaking and things like that. You mentioned Captain Crunch. Like, what's your perspective on that whole, these potentially new attack surfaces?
It's nothing new. I don't think it's a new attack surface.
100% agree.
I just another app. Any app that's running on a device with electricity flowing through it, could be your Nest controller, your Ring door camera, your phone, your whatever. It has vulnerabilities. It's just up to who wants to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. So yeah, this is just another vulnerability that I need to mitigate. So and with as we and we're going to talk about OpenClaw later, I know. As with any technology, I think if you configure it and deploy it in such a manner that you've um, managed your risk. So you thought about your risk appetite. I would be okay with losing this credit card because I don't leave any money there or something like that. So those are the only things that I, put in the space of this phone or this OpenClaw or this whatever. That's how I mitigate all that. That's how I manage all of my risk. I check my risk appetite, I configure appropriately, and I deploy, and then I use it. And I'm typically looking for what's the intersection of the usefulness of the tool that I'm using passes whatever the risk is. And if I can find that, and with Androids, the usefulness of the tool is a million times more than what my risk in using Androids is. I find the same thing in OpenClaw. I find this for sure. I find the same thing in Gemini. In Gemini, for example, I've never used the Gemini app. I go to a browser on my device and I use Gemini that way. And that was intentional. So yeah.
Well,
I
I
think
mean, why wait till later? Let's talk about OpenClaw. Well, go ahead, Jonah. You were going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that. Well, I was actually going to ask you as well before we go on to OpenClaw. Do you have like a preference of AI system? Do you use like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude? Do you use all of them? Do you use certain ones for different things, or?
Because I'm a researcher, I'm pretty much forced to use all of them, and it extends far beyond there. I'm using Kimmy K, like CDAT, all of them, because I'm researching, and I need to stay on top of the tech so that when I'm speaking to my non-technical business leader audiences, I'm able to communicate to them and say, for this week, and it's typically literally in weeks measured. For this week, this is the tool that does this the best. So when I'm building, I'm typically also building in ways where I can interchange models fairly readily. So the model is almost becoming a commodity. Almost. So I'm using things like Open Router or maybe Key AI to say, look, I have access to all the image models, and which one do I want? Which one am I going to use today? But that's also security mitigation. So I use Key AI, for example, with my OpenClaw, so that my Key AI is prepaid. I give it $50. If someone somehow gets one of my API keys, they're going to spend $50 and then they're going to run out of funds. And I'm very, very, very comfortable with that. It requires one extra step of mitigation because now I got to watch my email for when Key AI tells me, hey, you're running out of credits. So I can put another $50 there. But I'm perfectly fine with that.
I
But
noticed
that also gives me,
you're not
yeah,
auto reloading that either. Like that's
no,
part of the risk
exactly.
mitigation.
Precisely. I wouldn't even call it a nuisance. It is a trade-off that I'm willing to do to get that level of security that I'm comfortable with. If someone does do something bad and does some kind of goofy prompt injection and steals an API key, they're not getting very much.
Okay, and on to the OpenClaw then. As we talked about a little bit previously, I'm not an OpenClaw user. For me, as like somebody in security, it scares me to have like my accounts hooked up to an AI tool. What could you say that would persuade me to give it a go, or what reassures you that it's worth the risk?
I said earlier I'm not going to screen share, so I'm not going to screen share. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open my phone and I'm going to read what my Claude bot told me this morning. This is literally the first text I got from it this morning. Good morning, Greg. Oh, no, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. Here, night shift report. Big build tonight to recover from a failed sub agent last night. Major, name of product, Complete Tear Products. The sub agent that was supposed to create these products that I'm building, I asked it to build for a business I'm launching, failed due to API credits. So it confirms what I just said. I'm giving all of these tools very minimal credits. I manually built the critical missing pieces, 6 custom GPT configs, a Sermon Architect Pro, et cetera, and it lists all the things here. Then we have a soul test framework, which is 10K, 7 dimensional ethical decision guide for AI and ministry, 5 ministry templates, an IntelliSys packet, and it lists off all these things this does. All of your packets, as well as 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers packets for speakers presentations to conferences, they're all ready. All you need to do is submit them. They're located here on this Google Drive folder, and it says, wake up to a bunch of new deliverables. To which I said, this is the way I like to wake up. And I'm literally just reading from Telegram. This is the way I like to wake up, Mark. I call him Mark. Well done. He says, good morning. I'm glad you're pleased. Here's where we stand. Here's some other items that I'm working on right now. The usefulness of waking the heck up from literal sleep to find work I was working on last night is now done. Worth the $50 risk for me. Worth it all day. And I'll give you more context. When I started my OpenClaw journey way back in the beginning, so like 3 weeks ago, I was burning about $800 in tokens a day. And from that, even then at $800 of tokens per day, it was absolutely worth it. This thing has built out entire frameworks for me, works independently, is extraordinarily good at tech things like coding, like, hey, take this Excel sheet. There's 1,000 rows in it, and these 1,000 rows, some of them have images, some of them have file locations. Parse all of them, store the images, clean them up, make sure they're the 1,000 by 1,000 size so I can use them online, compress them if needed, put them in folders, upload them to a database so that I can access them online, and also match the database with other form tables based on, the other fields in the Excel sheet. And I walk away. 10, 15 minutes later, it's done, Greg. Here's the upload. It's here. You can now connect that. Dude, that. I would have paid a human to do that. Like literally, I would have paid a human to do that.
Yeah, I think the usefulness that you're talking about is unprecedented, right? As we move into this new era of AI. And I don't think a lot of people are arguing that, right? Like I think that's pretty well known. As someone that's also been embedded in security for 30 years, right? As you talked about, right? Like when we hear things like the latest headlines are talking about one-click RCEs, like this has nothing to do with like $50 on a token, right? This is potential access to additional systems. So like let's take a step back for a second for the risk of like losing a whole bunch of money and talk about like from a security perspective. What about the fact that there's these new RCEs, or is this a result of, is this a problem of the developers not configuring things correctly, or are we just hoping for the best? Like, give us a little context from your perspective on that side of from the security perspective.
Good. It's good. That's an infrastructure. That's a deployment. That's a planning. The best word is that's an architecture problem. And a big part of cybersecurity is always architecture. We've known if you architect something incorrectly, like, for example, an operating system like Windows, it'll take you a decade or more to unpack all of the mess that you've allowed because the architecture was poor from the very beginning.
You mean like leaving RDP open on the wide open internet? Things like SMB left open on the
I take umbrage to that statement, but either way, yes. But that's a very good example to be very transparent. He's talking about an RDP server that I have open on the public internet. But again, it's sequestered away and it has nothing on it.
I wasn't actually talking about that specifically. I was more talking about these.
But yeah,
you brought it up.
If you architect something incorrectly, it becomes very, very difficult and time consuming to mitigate the risks that you've allowed because of the architecture. So architecting OpenClaw to say, I'm going to build this thing and run it on my Linux or Windows or Mac box where all of my stuff is, so that it conveniently has access to all of my documents, all of my web browser tabs, all of et cetera, because then it has the data it needs, it can work. I think that is an unmitigated disaster waiting to happen. So one of the first things I'd say is keep it separate. It's mine. I have multiple of them now. They're all sequestered. They're away. I'm either running it on a dedicated box that I'm not running anything else on, that's headless, or I'm running it, and this is my preferred way, a VPS. So it's a virtual private server, completely in a box by itself. It has nothing else. I have no web access to it. No one does. The only way in and out is to send me messages. So, and the only message thing it can send messages to is me directly on Telegram. Yes, I know Telegram has its own issues, but the same thing. The only thing I'm using the Telegram for is to communicate with this one singular bot. I don't use Telegram to speak to my friends. So it's a very clear delimiting line of this is my world for this thing. And we already have established that it only has access to very finite amounts of resources. If I needed to store stuff, I'm going to create a separate Google Drive for it and say, this is your Google Drive. You own it. You save everything you want there. If I needed to work on a document for me, I'm moving the document from my world into that Google Drive. He doesn't have all my Google Drives. He has one file that I want him to work on today. And people confuse but you want to give it context, your context, so it can work. You know how I gave it my context? I took 45 minutes, if I'm being very transparent. I know people in this day and age, everything needs to be done in 5 seconds. This took me 45 minutes. I literally went to one of my favorite LLMs, picked one, and said, ask me as many questions as you need to ask me to learn about me, my businesses, my goals, my aspirations. And it asked, and I like to use this verbally, and that's intentional, because I found and I think a lot of humans are like this, think better in free thought. So stopping to type it, the tactile typing slows down the thought process. So I speak it into a mic. So ChatGPT or Claude or whoever is asking me questions, and I open up a Google Doc and I'm just answering. Okay, yeah, my name is Greg, and this is my business, and my goals for the next 5 years are so and so and so, and I'm an AI expert, cybersecurity, and I'm just rambling, and there's lots of uhs and ums and lots of actually no, I said this, but I meant this, and it's just a ramble answering 5 or 10 or 8 questions, and sometimes the LLM will respond back and say, okay, you said this, but what do you mean by this? And what are of those 3 things? What are your top priorities? Long story short, after 45 minutes, the interview's done, and I got 2,000 words in a Word document, and I give that to my LLM, to my OpenClaw, and say, hey, FYI, I need you to know about me. Here, take this document and review it.
Yeah,
And
I think it all goes.
thing about it is it just remembers it.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to even when we were talking about money on the API keys, right? We're talking about risk mitigation at the end of the day. And one of the things I like to point out to people, and full disclosure, I'm not currently using OpenClaw, but I am looking into ways to do it to set things up from a security perspective. But the way I like to remind people is like, you're concerned about security of OpenClaw, but you're not concerned about that Ring camera that you put on your door, or that smart lock that you put out there, or the badge printer that gets hacked. Like, we talk all the time about these different IoT devices for the last 20, 30 years and how insecure they are. And it's just a different attack surface. And to your point, we talk about defense in depth, we talk about zero trust implementation, all these big buzzwords. Well, this is where the proof is in the pudding, right? We shouldn't be scared of the technology. The technology, as you're pointing out, can do all kinds of really awesome things. We just have to know how to implement it and be thoughtful in our implementation, and not just like let it run wild. And you mentioned Telegram and potentially some issues there. I thought it was real interesting. I don't know if you saw this yet or not, Greg. I know we're both fans of Dave Kennedy. Hacking Dave does some amazing work, but he recently put out that he's releasing an open source project. I'm a little confused with the name. Dave, if you're listening, maybe you can help us out, because on LinkedIn, I'm sorry, you posted it as side channel. Pretty cool name. But then when you click on the link and go to GitHub, it's actually called Nightwire. So maybe you can help us out on what's the official name here. Maybe it was a project that turned into something, but he has this entire.
It's a total man in the middle attack, and he doesn't know that his site's being redirected.
It's a total, yeah. Maybe I'm completely hosed right now. Who knows?
Maybe he saw how much attention that was generated from like a Claude bot changing to Moldbot to OpenClaw, and he's like, oh, maybe I'll do that with pick a few names and we'll get a bit of attention.
Changing his name 17 times in 3 days.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a whole nightmare as well. Actually, we could go. Let's go down that rabbit trail for a second. Jonah, you were talking about, you just saw something about the how that name changed, like crypto attackers were domains.
I didn't look into the full details, but as I was looking into what happened, because it's really confusing, right? The names all sound very similar. Now every time I see like different names, different places, it's a bit. So I had a look into what actually happened. Apparently, I mean, it made sense that it was ClaudeBot, and then Anthropic basically said, look, that's too similar to Claude. Can you change the name? So they were going to change the name to Moldbot. But apparently, in the time that it took to swap the name over, the owner of, I think it was the owner of the GitHub repo, then didn't get the new name before he relinquished the old name. And then in this little Passover period, a very short time, both names got taken by crypto scammers who then started doing like a scam under the account. So watch out for that one, Dave, if you need to change the name.
That whole naming thing was crazy. Like, I mean, it was it's now it's still OpenClaw, right? And now it's been purchased by OpenAI or AccuHire.
They hired him. They hired him as the developer, but yeah, it's basically under OpenAI now.
For some insane amount of money. Maybe I won't be that lucky one day. But anyway, what I was talking about is this Nightwire thing where he's added some interesting features to OpenClaw, or security minded features, and one of them is the integration of leveraging Signal for all communications, right, to ensure that there's that end-to-end encryption, which I think is fantastic, right? Like, I think we'll keep seeing this personally. Like, I think we're going to keep seeing security professionals try to help everybody use the technology more securely, because we don't want to not use it. The technology is amazing. The question is, how do we do that in a thoughtful, secure way? And so I think Dave's helping with that problem.
Yeah, agreed.
I wonder as well, Greg, how much of I mean, there was obviously a big controversy whenever OpenClaw kind of blew up in terms of loads of instances being wide open online and people like leaving directories open, stuff like that. So from what I read, it wasn't really the default configure. It wasn't the default configuration that was the issue. People were actually misconfiguring things, and I wonder, could the developers just have put more warnings in place, like a big red button, like if you click this might happen, and then it's like you click yes, and it's like, are you sure this might happen? That could have probably put off a lot of like novice users who just would have been like, yeah, I'll just click this button. What's the worst can happen?
Users are leveraging AI to implement it.
Well, apparently the whole thing was written with AI as well, right? The whole app was like
as a non-novice user using it. I feel, this is very my personal opinion, I feel the warnings are plentiful. If you go to the site and actually run the install routine, et cetera, it's telling you multiple times. If you are not familiar with running servers and running environments, et cetera, you should not do this at all. Like, this is not a novice thing to just jump it up. So that's one. But along the lines, as you're installing, it's also warning you. And the older people here, so all three of us, you're gonna appreciate this. This is tantamount to when SMB was a thing. Everyone knew you shouldn't be sharing SMB folders just wide open on your network. It's a bad idea. It's going to lead to havoc.
By the way, we still find
the convenience of it. If I just make this folder SMB and just make it open, it's just so easy for me to tell all my employees, you could just drop a file here, and then, Susie down in accounting, she can access the file too. It's just so easy and so convenient. And I think that convenience is what led to a lot of the catastrophe that we saw very early on. Because if you do that, yeah, absolutely. By default, this thing has zero web or any kind of external facing ports open at all. Full stop. And this is public knowledge, so I'll say it. The only way I can even access a web console or anything else of this, I think it has SSH open. My apologies. The only way I can access a web console or any kind of a dashboard on this is to do a loopback first. So I got to manually run a loopback from whichever system I am using to go and connect for that second. And a second that loopback stops or I reboot my system, it's broken and no one else can get, like, it's moderately secure. Where it gets screwed up is when we try to say, and I think it's flawed logic, because we say, if I just give it everything, it has more context so it can do a better job. I don't agree with that. I think it's actually better, and we're seeing this in AI, because AI does, Stanford University just did a study, just a couple of months ago did a study. Even the best RAGs, the retrieval augmented generation, AIs that are based on, hey, here's 12,000 documents, use these when you're answering everything, kind of like Notebook LM does. Even those, after a certain amount of tokens,
there's a law of diminishing return.
They start guessing. They just start coming up with stuff, and they break after. So you just throwing more context at the thing does not make it better. You
Well,
need to be picky and say, this is really what I want you working on. So
and
the
think about
notion of I'm just going to give it everything and that will make it better. It's a flawed premise from the word go.
Well, I think about that from two perspectives. One, we also see a ton of AI LLMs that are specifically task oriented. Like you don't go, like, if you want really good images, you don't go to Chat GPT,
Right.
right? You go to things that are specialized in images, right? They have specialized ones in security. I think of it as the same way as humans, to be honest, right?
It
Like,
is
I personally can only take up so much domain knowledge across so many things. The wider and wider I try to get, the worse I get
thinner.
at worse I get. They call it a mile wide, an inch deep, right? And so I think it amazes me all the time when technology aligns with human science, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And what we're seeing there is that, like, there is such a thing as too much, but we as humans, again, for convenience, we're constantly trying to balance this usability versus security thing. The average Joe doesn't know enough about security to balance it correctly, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I think that's where us as the industry has to come around. But I want to, we're going to run out of time here shortly. I want to hit on one more topic because I think it could be really important for our users around this OpenClaw thing. And that's when we talked a lot about potentially, like, I'm just calling it the average Joe, and their perspective of OpenClaw and AI and things like that. But you also have a huge expertise in the business world, right? You talk about talking to CISOs and CEOs and things like that. And I think there's an interesting conversation to be had in the business world. Should a CISO be, like, how restrictive or how blocking should a CISO be in an enterprise when it comes to, let's just make it broad, like AI tools in general, right? Like, from a security perspective, the CISO is responsible for ensuring their organization doesn't get compromised, and it has to deal with, I'm just going to say it, dumb users, right? Or human in the loop is the hardest part. So when you're in front of the executive staff, at different companies talking, what is your approach to when the CISOs ask the question? Should I just block all these things? Like, how are you recommending businesses handle this AI boom, OpenClaw, all that fun stuff?
Awesome. And I've been spending a lot of my waking hours helping leaders of large to small organizations through this. My first thing is, typically I'll walk in and I'll say, stop spending money on AI tools. This is going to sound very familiar to anyone that's been in the cybersecurity industry for a minute. We get enamored with widgets, and we want the latest widget in every space, and we think this widget is going to come and it's going to fix every problem that we've had that we
Can't just
couldn't
throw
get
money at my
solved.
problems, Greg?
It cannot. So what we're seeing, what leaders are reporting, and the MIT study of early last year, early 2025, confirmed this. And when I say early, June, July is somewhere around there. 2025 confirmed this. More than 90% of AI initiatives have failed or are failing. And I believe the reason we're seeing that is because everyone rocketed into this, we're going to do AI, we're going to use AI, without taking a beat first to say, let me figure out where are the good use cases for AI, what are the things I should be using it for, where's the security that I can tolerate the AI risk in, and then moving forward. So you end up with a million tools. This one does images really good this week. This one does text really good. This one does, retrieval augmented generation really, really good, etc. And we end up with a billion tools, all of them doing candidly niche little tasks that we weren't doing and are not part of our core business objectives anyway. So now everyone is a AI expert that can generate UGCs, user generated characters. Everyone is an AI expert that can edit AI images, because those were the things that jumped up the most. But what if you're Coca-Cola and you're not into making images? You need to be very effective at making soda and shipping it and delivering it to the people that want to buy the soda. Images are secondary to your problem. So you need to figure out what are the processes that we've described really, 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 really well. I like to say, if I can explain it crystal clear to an intern, so that intern who's unfamiliar with the global politics of my company and doesn't know, who has all of the dark knowledge and what's hidden where, they can get this task done because the description is so clear. that's the one that you want to tell the AI to do, because you're going to need to be just that clear and tell the AI, here, this is the workflow, this is the process, run with this. And there it's going to be really, really, really good. That's why my OpenClaw is able to give me details like that when it wakes, because I've tasked it with specific things that I know this is exactly what I need. I've done this task 1,000 times. If you could just do it for me, and inevitably it does it way faster and candidly, oftentimes a lot better than I could have done it. Sometimes it'll make stupid mistakes. Sometimes it'll hallucinate. Sometimes it'll go off into left field and do things that I didn't ask it to do. Great, no problem. But the benefit of the clear steps that I had given it, and it's able to replicate that, it's absolutely worth it. So what do I recommend businesses? Stop, take a beat, figure out what are those opportunistic processes and tasks that you can say, this is the thing that if we do this better, if we do this more, this is going to affect our bottom line the most. If we're doing stuff because it's cute and because it's trendy and because, you know, look, all of the kids love it, that doesn't drive business. If we first can drive business and increase profitability and sometimes even revenue, that's what's going to make us a better company, help us doing stuff better, help us be a better nonprofit, whatever it is. That's what pays the bills. That's what drives progress forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. So here, Jonah, do you have any last questions for Greg before we close out this segment?
No, I mean, I think on our debate of whether you could convince me to use OpenClaw, I actually agree. I think me and Doug were talking about this earlier, and I was saying, like, if I was going to use it, I'd have to have it in a VM. It can't have access to my emails or any of my social media accounts or anything like that. And Doug said, yeah, it'd have to be in the cloud for me. I wouldn't even have it on a VM. So I totally agree. Like, as long as I think it's very useful to have AI integrated into what you're doing, as long as it doesn't have all your keys, basically.
Right. Mine has none of my keys. And another interesting thing, a lot of people jump on immediately and say, so I've been in this OpenClaw trend movement since it pretty much started. No OpenClaw has access to my emails yet. Everyone jumps on that for, oh, I'm gonna give it access to my emails. It can help me with, you know, starting to answer some stuff and starting to craft replies for me, even though I got to click send. Nope, I don't trust it that much. I'm going to do my own emails and my own texts and my own. And the only method I can communicate with this thing is Telegram. And it's still wildly useful. Super wildly useful. So I think a lot of the hype out there is just not true. It's hype. I keep seeing these 6 insane use cases for OpenClaw, and they're the same old nonsense. You know, generate a report, a research report, tell me what's trending on social media so I can go out and make some social media content. There's tools that could have done that. What's significantly more valuable for me, and this will probably resonate with you guys because I know you probably speak at conferences as well. I have a task where my OpenClaw goes out and researches Grok, because Grok has really good like present Twitter type things. It researches 2 or 3 other Perplexity, and then the internet, and 1 or 2 other places, and it just goes out and finds where are conferences that are looking for speakers with my profile. So that intersection of faith and AI and cybersecurity and business, who are looking for those speakers? And every day, so I basically have a speakers agent, which people pay thousands of dollars for. I basically have one, and every single day I get a report. You should apply to these 4 conferences, Greg. And as a matter of fact, Greg, with what we know about you, we've looked at their application form, and I've prepared an application for you. All you need to do is go and submit it. So that's when you heard the thing saying, I got 4 packets for you. Those were the packets it was talking about, because it saw that it found 4 conferences yesterday and I hadn't applied yet. So it was like, let me help you out a little bit. Here's the application. Here's the packets. Go and apply for it. And because of that single thing, my speaking pipeline is fuller than it. And my speaking pipeline has always been full. But my speaking pipeline at this point in February of 2026 is fuller than it has ever been since I've been a public speaker, which is more than 30 years. So just that alone is worth the price of admission.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Well, go ahead. You have something?
Oh, sorry, just gonna say, yeah, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think, you know, some key takeaways for our audience, right? Like, don't be scared of the technology, right? Know that it can be useful to you. 2, you got to use it you have to learn how to use it securely, which in this case is going to be, adding limits to things like API keys and ensuring isolation and making sure that you only give it what it needs. And I think a good takeaway for some of our executive audience is like, don't let the fear of the fear around these tools prevent you from providing additional potential profitability and revenue to your company because you're scareful of tools. No, we need to sit back and figure out how to handle the new attack surface in a secure manner. Hey, Greg, I thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome to have you on this segment of the podcast, and we'll definitely have to do it again.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks very much, Greg.
If I can close with one more quick
Yeah, of
thought
course.
to the people that run businesses, you know, that audience that listens to your podcast, slow down, take a bead, take a breath, figure out what's most valuable for you for that technology, and apply the technology really focused to just those things. You don't need to automate everything tomorrow afternoon. That has a proven track record of not yielding the results it's going to yield distraction. So focus in technology helps tremendously. Focus, and it requires discipline. It is not the intuitive thing to do. Intuitively, many humans, particularly entrepreneurs, are driven by inspiration. So, oh my God, these are 12 great things I could do today. No, that's a terrible plan. Focus. Do the one thing really well. Iterate, go to the next thing, do that really well, iterate. So you'll end up doing the 12 things, but you're not going to do them all at one time. That's my biggest advice for how to leverage this type of technology in a safe manner. Because when we don't focus is when we lean into the things that are arbitrarily unsafe. Oh, it's convenient for me to just give it full network access. Yeah, because you're unfocused. So those are my feedback.
Hey,
And
thanks for this.
hopefully that's useful.
Ladies and gentlemen, final words of wisdom from Greg Richardson. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you next time.
This was awesome,
Thanks,
Doug.
Greg.
Thank you. Good to meet you, CryptoCat.
You too.
All right, so now we're going to be in our mitigation minute segment for the podcast, sponsored by Rapid7 Metasploit Pro. And we are going to be talking about what are some things that we can do with the attacks and threats that we've talked about in the rest of the podcast. You know, we talked about all these different things, and like we want to focus in this segment on how can we be proactive? How can we make sure that we're protecting our organizations? And I'm delighted to be joined by Spencer here. Spencer leads our Metasploit team and the research team here at Rapid7. And he's going to be able to tell us a little bit more about how we're how they're integrating some of the Metasploit modules to help you determine whether or not you are vulnerable and to what degree you're vulnerable of certain vulnerabilities. So one of the vulnerabilities that keeps coming up, or one of the companies, I suppose, that keeps getting hammered, depending on how you want to look at it, right, is good old SolarWinds. And SolarWinds, you know, probably made most famous from the supply chain hack. At this point, I don't remember, Jonah or Spencer, how long ago that was. Was that early 2000s or something? Was that maybe mid 2000s? It was a long time ago. But they keep coming back with different threats. And so in January, there was about 6 or so vulnerabilities against SolarWinds help desk that we ETR'd here at Rapid7 Emerging Threat Response, thought it was important to inform our customers about. And there's been some more discoveries since then. In fact, as recently as yesterday, as of the date of this recording. So, Jonah, what are some of the other things that we've noticed here with SolarWinds recently?
Yeah, this one just came up. So let me just share my screen and we'll have a quick look at this article. Very relevant. This is actually related to the vulnerabilities that we're discussing as well with Metasploit. So as you said, there were some more CVEs that came out for the SolarWinds help desk. Watchtower actually just released a technical analysis of 3 new CVEs they found, and super relevant because they were actually looking to analyze the CVEs that were released at the time, and that was deserialization and some auth bypass, and I think a couple of others. But in doing so, they actually found multiple new CVEs, which were also auth bypass and RC via deserialization. So
That's
super serious.
Nothing like trying to figure out how they fixed it to find out that there's more vulns.
Yeah.
More now with companies following the trend of like withholding more details, so the researchers are left to look for things a little bit more ambiguously.
No,
For sure.
absolutely. I think we see that all the time now.
I actually have a blog as well that I'll hopefully be releasing soon once the vendor gets back to me, but it's for just a consumer device, and it was kind of similar. I just wanted to have a look and see how some CVEs worked and then how they'd patched it. And the more I looked at it, I was like, have they patched it? And it turned out they hadn't. So hopefully I'll be able to publish something on that soon.
I think it's good too, though, that as researchers, we're validating that fixes are actually fixing things. Like ultimately, the only thing that separates us from the bad guys is what we do with the knowledge. And what we're trying to do with the knowledge is protect the organizations, protect the world, not to be too dramatic about it, right? But and if we be able, if it's not actually fixing anything, we should validate that, right? I think that's a positive thing.
For sure. So I don't want to go over too much of this article, mainly because it's super long, super technical, and it would take me like over an hour to explain this, and I'm not going to do as good a job as the actual write-up itself. I do want to just highlight a couple of things that I thought were funny or interesting about it. Obviously, they're always super funny. As you see, they're filled with memes and very interesting writing style, the Watchtower blogs. But if we scroll down a little bit, so they added... Yeah, they added some new checks in here. There was some new sanitization function, and there was a function they added specifically called check suspicious payload. As you can see, typo is not ours, so Watchtower didn't make this typo numerous times throughout the blog. It was actually what was put into the help desk patch. And yeah, I thought this is interesting. You know, if you see like a new sanitization function that's been added and the name of it is spelled incorrectly, then maybe there's some other issues with the actual check itself. And yeah, that's basically, they found some...
I don't know, man. I'm in a hurry to do it. I spell stuff all the time wrong in code. Hopefully it was just a spelling error. Was there a code error to go with it?
Yeah, when I was going to check through some of your code vulnerabilities. But yeah, they found the auth bypass. They had to bypass some checks that were added into the new patch, and specifically one of the files here was C3PO that they were able to get some gadgets for the deserialization. And if you scroll down,
SolarWinds reference.
Yeah, we need to ask SolarWinds that. It seems like a bit of a coincidence if it's not. But as they got further anyway, they basically got the full chain. They got the unorth RCE, and you'd think that's it, job done. We can move on now. But they realized that, I've got to scroll down a lot here. Yeah, so they realized whenever they went back to the patch notes, it wasn't just that SolarWinds said, oh, install this patch and you're going to be okay from these vulnerabilities. They said, install this patch and then you need to manually go into this folder and you need to delete this file, c3po.jar. So not a great thing to see after you've just spent a long time researching and developing exploits to find out, oh, you've actually got to delete the file that you needed. So
that's rough.
Yeah, so ready to go, and then yeah, documentation says no. But they spent a little bit more time and they were able to find what they needed to get the full chain in the end. So I think it was the 3 CVEs they got in total with 2 auth bypass and then the 1 deserialization. So literally this was just released, the technical analysis of this. And yeah, I thought it was a good segue because these are some of the vulnerabilities that Stephen Fewer looked at originally from the CVE releases, and also what we're going to talk about with the Metasploit module.
Shout out to Steven helping us produce these Metasploit modules. Awesome researcher there.
Definitely. Let me stop sharing my screen.
And I have the modules that we can go ahead and check out from Mr. Fewer. All right, so that's probably a great segue to be able to go ahead and demonstrate Mr. Fewer's content that we've been able to add into Metasploit Pro. So I'm really excited about this demo because not only are we being able to show this really cool module, but I'm also using the brand new UI that we're releasing in Metasploit Pro 5 that's going to be released on March 12th. So we've gone ahead and we started our project here to be able to go ahead and test the exploit against our target system. And we're going to get started by pulling up the module that we want to go ahead and test. So we have here, we're searching for our module, and this is the one at the very top. It's the most recent. One of the things that I really like about the new UI in particular is the target selection. So because we know which target we want to go ahead and validate first, we're just going to type in that one IP instead of scanning the entire range. One of the other newer features in Metasploit Pro 5 that we've updated recently has been the ability to switch between a run and a check method on the module. We know like a lot of customers might be a little bit apprehensive about running some of these exploits, especially if it's a production system, maybe on the edge or something along those lines. So we want to be able to make it easier for them to be able to just check if the vulnerability is present with actually going out going through the entire exploit chain.
That's fantastic feature. In fact, that's pretty similar to vulnerability management scanning as well, right? Kind of all built into one tool here a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with our ability to be able to go ahead and check it, now if we want to go ahead and actually like exploit it, I want to point out another newer feature at Metasploit Pro 5 is the ability to go ahead and replay this module. So we just ran through it and we saw that the target was vulnerable. We're going to hit that replay button and take it right back, and it's going to show us that it retained all of our configuration. Now, if we do want to go ahead and actually like exploit the vulnerability and get the shell, because like everybody really
Shells.
wants the shell.
Give me the shells, Spencer. I want nothing but shells.
Absolutely. So with that, if you love shells, you probably have a particular shell that like you want the most. Hopefully it's Meterpreter. That's
Always.
our best, most featureful one. We have the ability now actually to be able to go ahead and individually select our payloads. So what we're looking at right here is the entire list of all the different payloads that are compatible with this module. We're going to use the old tried and true Meterpreter reverse TCP in this case to get our Meterpreter session instead of our standard command shell. With that all set, we can go ahead and rerun the module without too much additional configuration because it kept those other values for us thanks to the replay button. And now this time we're actually going to go ahead and exploit the vulnerability to get that session. And one of the things I think is pretty cool about this target on our Windows target is that we are actually leveraging the vulnerability with a pretty novel gadget chain that Stephen Fewer had developed to be able to trick it into loading a DLL from us. So what we're seeing right here is that malicious extension is our payload DLL that's being loaded up over a UNC path in order to execute our payload.
You gotta love the way Windows does that, man. You can bring in DLLs from all over the place. That's why, like in Exploit Guard, they put in those extra mitigations for that, which nobody turns on, so this works all the time. But I got a question for you. So when I want to pen test, I've always got Responder running, right? Because I never know like what I can get from an NTLM hash perspective. Because this is loading from a UNC path, is there any way that I can also capture those hashes or those hashes logged or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked. Metasploit's SMB server that's hosting that file does also log the challenge and responses in the backend. So this is a machine account. It'd probably be pretty tough to crack, but we do actually have it. And in other scenarios where like maybe it was being loaded by like a user or a non-service account, you might have better luck being able to go ahead and crack those. But Metasploit's going to log them for you anyway, so they're all stored for you in the credentials table if that's a technique that you need to pursue.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I also don't have to have another tool open, right? Like I can have everything I need in one central location. So that's good. And then a follow-on question to that too is, from the perspective of enterprises testing this, a lot of times we hear at the executive level, like from a pen test reporting perspective, like, can you map these to me to like the MITRE technique? Everything these days is mapped to MITRE. So is there a way like these modules and the process that you're executing here through Metasploit Pro is documented in that fashion?
Yeah, actually, we've made some improvements to our search capabilities, and we've been going back through and tagging a lot of historical content that we've had with the MITRE attack techniques. So if you have threat intelligence information that's saying like a certain threat actor is targeting businesses in your sector with a particular technique, you can actually go in and search for it using ATT and CK : and then like the technique ID T1000 or what have you. And Metasploit will pull up the content that leverages that technique so you can test it in your environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Jonah, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, really nice demo, Spencer. I don't really get to see the Metasploit Pro interface, so the UI is looking really nice. I'm just normally in the terminal with the Metasploit framework, which is awesome as well. But I do have a question about the UI. Is there a plan for a dark mode anytime soon?
We are really excited about the new UI, but the dark mode, I think we're going to end up working towards that a little bit later on. It's not going to be in the release on March 12th, but we've definitely been asked about it, so I think we're going to have to look into it. Everyone likes the dark mode, and the other question I've heard is where are the cows? The traditional framework users are always looking for the cows.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think dark mode is required, man. Hackers
Dark mode and then themes. Then get some nice skins on there.
And really nice like neon theme.
Yeah.
Well, can we import the Metasploit framework ASCII art? You got to get all the ASCII art. Like when you get the when you load it up and things like that.
I love that.
Got to get that
Yeah.
ASCII art in there. All right. Well, hey Spencer, thanks for taking a few minutes here to show us the exploit that was written and it's in the Metasploit Pro framework and talk about some of those new features. These vulnerabilities timely. SolarWinds just came out with, or I should say, they didn't come out with the vulnerabilities. Their software, it just came out that their software is vulnerable to these things. We want to make sure that the community is well informed. So thanks so much for your time, Spencer.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Spencer.
All right, Jonah, I think that's a wrap for the episode today. I tell you what did you think was your favorite part? What did you, give me one takeaway? What did you learn? What are you thinking? Man,
Well,
we
I
went
think
through everything.
the overall theme of the AI vulnerabilities and finding vulnerabilities with AI tools was pretty cool. The Beyond Trust vulnerability was super interesting, how they found that from looking at the Avanti research, and also a really nice guest segment to get Greg on and hear about his thoughts, try to convince me that OpenClaw is safe to use and I should give it a go. So
Yeah,
maybe I'll do that in a VM.
Yeah, definitely. We ended up with an AI theme today, and I think that's good. Pretty typical to find a lot of AI news. And yeah, I don't know. I might have to consider looking at leveraging OpenAI, or not. I'm sorry, OpenClaw and some of those.
There's too many. There's too many. The names are changing too much.
Yeah, there's too many names, and especially with all the vulnerabilities being found leveraging those AIs. It's something to dig into just a little bit further. But I think for episode number 1, great success. Thank you all for tuning in to the episode today, and we can't wait to come back next time and provide you more content from Rapid7 Labs.
Yeah, and if you want to come on the podcast, if you have some cool demos to show, like we're particularly interested, like if there's new research, if you've like developed new exploits, you want to come and talk about them, you can share your screen, show us things running, and just reach out to me or Doug.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to get some really cool research on this podcast. And hey, that also reminds me, if you thought this was helpful, let us know. Comment in the section of the podcast, because we want to continually improve this as being the first episode. So things you like, you dislike, let us know. Please like, subscribe, so you know when the next episode comes out. And we look forward to talking to you all next time.